Hello everyone, welcome back to D1 Crashout. I feel like it's been a while since I made one of these, since I made one of these, so never a better time than the present. But again, I forgot to record the video. I think I was just solo queuing comp, and I just earnestly was like kind of just like not really paying attention. So yeah, you guys got to get a recording, which I might have messed up the speed, but anyways, we'll see. So there is this concept for not only familiar relationships, not necessarily family, but just you and a friend, but also between like actually implementing technical things where you need to have somebody who has a very high level idea, like a president or a product manager, or somebody who might have a more of a creative vision or maybe understands your clientele, just whatever it is, and something which is more specific, which would be more technical, which would not be abstract. So you need to have somebody with an abstract, very high level idea, and you need somebody who can handle low level content and be able to build something very specific. That's not to say that these roles have to be exclusive to any particular one person, but you need to have both. And this ties into the idea of like belief, for example, right? So you need to not only be able to believe that you are capable of doing something which is greater than you currently are, right? Because you have no reason to believe that change is going to occur until you will it into existence, but you also need to be able to actually do it. So like if you are pursuing a world record, you need to believe that you can be the world record holder, and then you also need all the technical pieces to actually follow it up. Some of that is actually your belief. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of like that experiment with like rats, where they had them in water swimming. They only lasted like 2 minutes, but if you took them out of the water, gave them the power to believe that they could be saved, they were able to swim for much longer. It was either 30 minutes or 2 hours. Honestly, don't remember the fine details, but that is a prime example of how belief is a genuinely important factor. And if you split it up between the individuals, no matter how bad things get, as long as you have a product manager, maybe, or a manager in general, a president, somebody that people can rally behind, you have a type A leader, is that, I think what like business minds might call it, of somebody who has this belief or a vision in something, and they get results. And that's based off of history, most likely, where they just have a long-winded history or proof of concept, or they just maybe are really persuasive. You honestly don't really know. But for those particular types of individuals, you have somebody who, well, brings people together into building something which is greater than themselves. Something which really technical people generally lack that creativity, that ideation, or that belief in something which may not make a lot of sense at the moment. But in order to build something new, you need to, do something new. And that generally comes with thinking outside of the box. Something which particularly technical people aren't always seen as particularly good at. And then that comes to the people actually doing it need to believe in the person and their vision and perhaps the actual product that they're building or whatever you are working on. And with this balance comes, well, a balance where you need to have those technical pieces where people are particularly good at building things, and you need to have that person who has that belief and instills that belief in others. And where this curse of abstraction comes in is when the person who is telling other people what to build starts to lose sight of the difficulty or the ramifications of building that particular thing, right? So if I am a product manager, for example, it means a lot to my team if I actually know what I'm talking about and I understand the development life cycle and how there's a maintenance phase instead of the second that you push the product, asking somebody to build an entirely new product. I think for a more normal analogy, that might be if I ask somebody to, clean the gutters, and then all they do is like spray Windex or something up there, and they don't actually clear the leaves. It's like, I know that you're supposed to clear the leaves, and I can validate if you did something correctly or not, but you may not have known what the correct thing was to do. You just listened to my instructions, and that disconnect is what I often refer to as that curse of abstraction. It's like that necessary evil of, yes, high level instructions make things simpler, it makes communication better when working within certain context windows. Like at some point, since we honestly do not live in axioms, things should get easier, right? Like you should be able to understand that if I say like, hey, I want to make money, that even though there are a lot of different ways to do that, the common success metric is, well, making money. And that also means that if you have this very abstract, high level idea, the way that you do that is more open to interpretation. There is more creativity in that particular avenue. And that is a good thing, right? People like being creative. They don't like being told what to do. So if you're telling somebody to do something, you want to make sure that they have those free will aspects to it, and which that might be a human bias, right? Like if somebody gives you a very vague idea, or someone gives you a very specific idea, and you end up implementing the exact same idea that the person told you to make originally, it doesn't really matter if somebody told you to do it on a very granular level or a very vague level, as long as the thing gets done in and of itself. But it matters to you, the creator, that it felt like you had a part in making something greater than yourself that was also uniquely your own contribution, and also that you had the autonomy and trust from somebody else to be able to make it. And this also comes into interpersonal communication. Like, I don't know if you ever had people who gatekeep, or people who are particularly keen on not really expressing themselves plainly, on being misunderstood, but looking for people who understand them without making it easy for them to be understood, which was always crazy to me because if you want somebody to do something, you should make it as easy as possible. But to them, it's like about finding something which comes naturally, about something which is easy for them. Like, why should I have to change myself to be fit between more people when I can just keep on gambling and hoping that somebody finds me who just understands me, which unfortunately I see as like almost completely fair. Like, it's to each their own. They're taking on the risks of having a more specific clientele, maybe one would say, and if you're talking about love or friends, for example. But they also reap the rewards of just having things come easy, and it is also particularly easy for them to get along with, because if somebody naturally understands you in the moment, if you just don't change at all, they're going to continue to be able to understand you easily. And maybe if you change, they still are able to understand you easily. That is a skill that they might have relative to you, and which is now getting into my D3 Crashout territory. So I'll stop diving into this side tangent. But if I say something really open-ended, like you remember that one time, and somebody immediately understands me, I feel seen. I feel heard. It makes me feel special. You have that unique relationship. I have siblings, and sometimes I talk with my mouth full, and for some reason, my siblings can understand me, and I feel like I can understand them if they do the exact same thing, and we call it siblish, and it makes people feel special, having those unique culture zones that are relative to just the individual, right? That's why people gatekeep, and that's why people are so particular about the ways in which they talk to each other, because slang and particular culture and language and shared experiences like make those moments so special with people. And belonging is power, right? Everybody wants to belong. The difference between loyalty between people is, and what good bonds and happy bonds between people is, just that sense of belonging, where maybe you feel safe, or you feel seen, or you feel heard, and you have common values, and it's easy for you guys to work together. So something to think about. But again, getting away from my original point, it is just something which I personally find bothersome, where there is not always a value on clear-cut communication between individuals. Like, it's not a skill that a lot of people like want to learn. It's more valuable to be able to make yourself easily understood, whether or not the communication in and of itself was good, which might not make a lot of sense, right? But it doesn't particularly matter, right? If you are talking to somebody and you understand what they're saying, even if it is complete gibberish to somebody else, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that it was formatted terribly, the spelling sucked, or grammatically it was terrible. It could just mean a language barrier or a context barrier, where slang or a common usage of a word or phrase, like idiomatic expressions, for example, was very well suited to a particular demographic of individuals, and a lot less people knew about a certain way that somebody would say something relative to other people. There is just so many variables at play, but as long as you are understood and the action gets done, it doesn't really matter if the communication sucked, because bad, quote unquote, bad communication, which isn't clear or concise or appeals to a large group, is still good communication if it gets the point across and if people act on it. And that's one of the things that like kind of pisses me off, where a manager might, give you really vague instructions, such as my teachers in college, professors. And then if someone gets a good grade on the project and gets exactly what they thought they told people that they asked for, then they use that as a success metric to say that, oh, no, I am a good teacher. That was good communication. If one person can understand it, everybody can understand it. And it doesn't matter if I get better at communication as long as somebody understands it and gives it proof that I am not the one that needs to change. And, well, that's exactly what happens. And then there's one person at the very high end of the curve, and everybody else is, well, not there because this particular teacher just decided, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want. And as long as somebody proves the concept, I don't need to be any more specific. That was good communication, right? So something which, even it is more effort for the person asking people tasks to do, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do it, because as long as the communication gets across to whatever that person deems a success, it is good enough. And you could argue that's laziness, you could argue that's a fail in the education system, whatever it is. Unfortunately, good communication means communication that gets the point across, even if it is not universal communication. And god damn, that is annoying. Right? There was a project which had pretty clear outlines in one of my object-oriented principles class. And then there was a hackathon I went to. I already talked about it. The NVIDIA Founders Hackathon, in which they didn't give any instructions or problem solving at all. They just said build something with an agent in 2 hours. And agentic AI, if you are not well informed about it, basically just means AI that can use tools. And tools being defined as, well, literally almost anything. Your browser, it has access to your file system, it moves around files, or like command line tools, it has access to terminal, like whatever it is. It basically just means AI that can do stuff autonomously. And the projects that did particularly well at that hackathon were around common problems like legalese, or continuing to work within a command line interface, like making it easier for people to vibe code things that they already vibe coded, in which if more people knew that, they probably would have made better projects. But because the task was so open-ended and quote unquote people who made it just understood the assignment, they got benefits for that. As in, they got greater reach from NVIDIA. Like I think they got interviewed like right away after it, and that you also get to actually meet some of the people who work on like brev.dev, I think. And it just goes to say that unfortunately it is a skill to be able to understand things before you have any right understanding them. If that makes sense, right? It's just, if somebody doesn't need to explain themselves at all and I find a way to understand them, well, then that's great. And if I meet somebody and I like don't even have to say any words and they can already profile who I am, then that's great. And I don't need to work any harder on myself or on communication or being understood, and they don't have to communicate and it feels like less effort. It's just everything is sunshine and rainbows. And that's exactly how it should be, if one would argue for this communication, which alleges that to be a great communicator is to communicate not at all and to be able to just make a great guess and inference about something. But yeah, it's very limiting. It almost takes away the entire point of communication. And you could argue that it is a form of communication to be able to understand somebody without the need for them to explain themselves. But it also rewards that behavior to be not very well understood and to be misunderstood. And that's what I don't like about abstraction, is that even though it rewards intimacy for particular groups or individuals who have unique communication circles, it also just makes things almost infinitely more difficult for not only broadening your horizons and diversifying the people you meet and all that good stuff that I personally value in life in general, right? Which is, I think people will find more success with the broadest possible options, with the most diversification. I think people will benefit from having clear communication so they don't get misunderstood and you don't go around in these big circles where people just, actually just have misunderstandings and where things aren't particularly clear. And, well, it's just not the case. It's just not a priority for people to communicate clearly. It's not a priority for people to just understand each other without thinking either. It's like there's mixed opinions on it because people have been exposed to different environments, ones where people felt naturally understood and ones where people didn't ever need to. It's like when people say that like attractive men aren't very good in bed because they never had to be, like it's just that concept. And some people just never had to be good communicators because they felt very easily understood. They just intuitively understood society and societal expectations, and they never actually felt the need to dive deeper and explain themselves or their actions because they never felt pressure to. Meanwhile, some people like me didn't really understand social norms for a very long time, and I would just go out and embarrass my friends and say dumb things in public, or maybe let kids take advantage of me intellectually because I misspoke. And it has been a very deliberate effort to be a good communicator, a clear communicator, and getting your intentions across the first time on this unspoken language, which is relative to everybody ever in the world, and it's very annoying to me. So, turned into a rant about communication, got a little bit off track, but yes, it is a sense of unity and bonding for people to be able to understand with very little, and unfortunately, rewarding that behavior means rewarding poor communication, a problem which I think could be solved very easily. But if it was not clear for the fact that I just ranted it for the past 15 minutes, there is no clear solution. Okay. See ya.